Do you have any memories of being told stories when you were growing up?
Yes. Well, my grandfather could tell story, or when he tells his memories and past things that happened to him, he's really funny, comical. Somebody that listens to America's Funniest Home Videos every single day, so he's like in his comedy bag always. He's a trickster. But he would tell stories just growing up, but they will open up this whole world, and you could see he would activate all my senses, and um, my grandmother also, she plays the banjo. And she used to tell stories of just things that happened when she grew up too, and her stories with her father, who taught her how to play the banjo and the guitar. So yeah.
So do you play either of those instruments?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't play those instruments. I feel like the musicality is there and passed on. My mother that raised me, but my her oldest cousin raised me, and she was the choir director at the church. So there's a lot of musicality that comes into the work. We had this thing called a Waters Trio, which was like me and two other cousins, and we used to perform at a thing called a Kumbla Festival every year. So music and like the musicality is there, but not necessarily the playing of instrument. Yeah.
So why do you want to go deeper into storytelling?
I went the traditional route, for like learning acting, but I think a lot of the stuff that I was pulling on, and a lot of where I found that my work was going, like it was between poetry, and it was between this like presentational thing, that was always like influenced by the stories that my grandfather was telling or my grandma, and I did not know that until I started to get around people who storytell, and I was like, okay, there's something here. There's something like between these worlds of poetry, between the presentation and like between like showing and doing, that like feels organic and feels like what I'm already doing, in a lot of ways, and kind of stringing the music was always there, but kind of stringing these stories between the music is something that I was doing before I knew. There's storytelling with a capital S, right? I didn't know what tradition I was in.
That's very similar to my experience. So, I was doing programs for children, and I had a business card that said basically that stories and music for children, And then I went to a friend of mine brought me to the first Black Storytelling Festival. And here were all of these people doing the same thing I was doing and calling it storytelling. And I'm like, I went and got a new business card. It said Shanta Storyteller. So I didn't even know that whole world existed.
It's like a hidden, like, what's the Wakanda world where it's like opens up and you're like, oh wow, everyone's in here.
Right. Right. So welcome.
Necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, it ain't necessarily so. Church woman, let's be more specific. The one with the short hair that possesses some kind of power, like what the folks will call intercessory prayer warrior, wears all whites and sits in the front of some Baptist church that is really Pentecostal in nature because the pastor was ordained by a woman who can heal people with her hands, so very much so hoodoo. She's a widow because her husband, who was the former church van driver, did silly stuff like pop his eyes outside of his head, shape-shifting into a kind of chameleon, like something torn that one show, America's Got Talent. Well, he's dead. Janita, the churchwoman who is now before this council, called upon green seagrass, called from the very space of on-time God. Yes, he is. And she harassed him onto the table at gunpoint and said, I won't let you go until you bless me, just like Jacob. She harassed him onto the kitchen table, just like Jacob.
So how do we suddenly change that from a performance piece to storytelling? First of all, you were playing to the camera, right? Instead of talking to me.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. So you were performing.
Yeah.
Okay. Which can be part of what you do. It is what you do. Okay. But if you were telling it as a story, you would pull it back a little bit and almost make it more conversational. You know, what's the character's name?
Janita, but church woman, yes.
Church woman was, talking more of church woman. Church woman was a widow. His husband drove the church van, whatever. Make it, just pull it back, not as dramatic.
Yeah.
A little more conversational, making eye contact with your audience instead of playing to the camera. You're looking around at the people who are in the audience. You're telling them what happened and trying to connect with people as you're talking to them, rather than so much in your face kind of delivery. Yeah. So it's a more subtle thing than a performance piece.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So also in storytelling, it's all memorized.
Yeah.
Okay. In a sense. Okay. Now, so if you're doing a rhyming thing, obviously you have to remember the words word for word, because you want your rhyming scheme to be maintained.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you want to get from point A to point B without having it totally word for word.
Yeah. Okay.
That way you open yourself up for some surprises in your delivery.
Okay.
And for me, that's some of the joy in it. That ideally, every time I tell a story, I tell it a little bit differently, and while still getting the point across. And you might find some things in here that, oh, I like that. I like that better than the way I told it before.
Yeah.
And so what you're memorizing the trajectory of the story without having it word for word, without it being totally locked in. So although in this one, because right now you have it as a performance piece, how can you just shift it a little bit and tell it more like a narrative, more like something that happened? Is it possible?
Yeah.
Just as a challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you might have a little less repetition.
Yeah.
Or you might find that repetition to be to your advantage.
Yeah.
There might be keywords that you want to keep in there that you repeat at certain times to bring it back, the things that you want to emphasize. But work on it. See if you can tell it more like a story. Ready?
Yes. So I love this one song called "It Ain't Necessarily So," because it's about this trickster who shows up inside of oral story traditions a lot. And this particular one was written by Gershwin, but he was studying South Carolina and the people in South Carolina before he. And this is a song that, even though it was written by Gershwin, historically a lot of Black people have taken that song and just made it their own, just like any jazz standard. But it goes, "It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, it ain't necessarily so. And it's a story about God putting down two bundles on earth. And there's a white man and there's a black man, and God just lays down this big bundle in the middle of the earth. So the white man's on one side of the earth and the black man's on the other side of the earth, and they see two bundles. But one is huge. One is this big bundle with a red ribbon on top, and the other one is this tiny bundle. Looks like a mojo bag or something, just something you could put in your pocket. And the black man was on the other side and the white man was on the other side, so they go racing and they run to the bundle as fast as they can. And the black man gets to the bundles faster. He grabs the one, the biggest one that he could find, which is, 10 times bigger than him. So he's dragging this. He's like, this one is mine because I got here first. And so the white man's like rushing, trying to get that out of his hand. And he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just take this one, this little tiny one. So the black man's rubbing his hands, he's opening his bundle. He's smiling like it's Christmas. And he looks inside the bundle. He looks around through the corner. He starts pulling things out, and he saw a hose. He pulls out a shovel. Then he pulls out a whole mule. Then he pulls out some dirt and some seeds and a rake and a broom. And he's left with all this work. And the white man pulls out what's in his little tiny, and it's just a little notepad and a tiny pen. So that's why the black man is always working and the white man is just figuring and figuring and figuring and figuring. Which is why I think it ain't necessarily so.
Yeah. I like the way you set up the historical background of the song before you went into it. Nice introduction.
That helped me a lot. I was like, I don't know where I'm going, but we gonna be here.
And the visual of the two bundles was good too. Good work.
Yeah.
So part of what I have to write up is what I intend to work with you on. So tell me what you think about these things. Okay. So since we're going to be talking about the African American folk tradition, I thought we would talk about specifically the elements of Black storytelling, what distinguishes Black storytelling from storytelling of other cultures. Mm-hmm. And talk more about performance techniques, voice, gesture, how it differs, how storytelling differs or differentiates from theater. And the many types of stories within the genre of Black storytelling. Some ethical considerations, like just within the storytelling world, kind of the do's and don'ts.
Okay.
And you mentioned in your narrative wanting to know more about combining music and storytelling. So do that. And then they also wanted to know what would be our future relationship. So I came up with this idea of kind of maybe an annual coaching session. Because what I found is that some of the people that I've worked with, now I feel like I can't tell them anything. Okay. But if we have an agreement that that if I go to one of your performances, say 5 years from now, I can still talk to you about what you did, and that you would be open to some of my critiques. So how's all of that sound?
No, that's amazing.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, look forward to work. I hope we can do this.
Yeah, me too.
Under this arrangement,
Yes.
but whether we get the money or not, I would still love to work with you.
Thank you.